Go. Recording. We're back. Friday, 1 o'clock. And Melbourne has turned on the weather for us.
Beautiful out there.
It is fantastic. It's a great day to get you 2 hours of exercise within 5 kilometres of your house.
Absolutely. Do a little exploring.
Yes, I like to put that in there because people might watch this later down the track and go, far out. You remember that time where we could only go within 5 kilometres of our house? And
nice little time capsule.
Yeah, I've been listening to Dane Swan's podcast, which is really good for a laugh. He doesn't really take anything too seriously. And I listened back to some of their podcasts for the start of first lockdown, and just how unserious, I don't know the word for unserious, but how unserious they took the pandemic. They literally were taking the piss out of it. And then if you slowly get through the episode, they start to take it a bit more seriously. And it's been so funny to just look back and just go, in March. So I remember we played so we lost our first final in cricket, but we got a second chance. And in between that first week and second week, I remember going, let's just hope we can get a grand final in 2 weeks' time. Yeah. And then we got smashed in the prelim. And that was the week we weren't allowed to shake their hands. We weren't allowed to have arvo tea. We weren't allowed to have drinks together. And we were laughing. We were like, this is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
And then, 3 days after that game, all the grand finals got called off. And we're like, this is just silly. Why is this such a big deal? But now 6 months later, you go, I get it.
Well, it hadn't really hit us. Well, I remember the same weekend. It hadn't really hit Australia to an extent at that point. Because that week, where it was the no handshakes or anything, it was when we were all laughing about the old foot taps and the elbows.
Yeah.
Our ones were playing the first week of their grand final that week. And we were all, everyone's down there having a laugh, watching. And we played 3 shields, and it was like the grand final to go up a grade.
Yeah.
We bowled the team out for 80 odd. So that night, we're all on the beers going, we've got the win here. And then the next week, it was all called off, and the opposition won the game because they were higher on the ladder.
Oh my! That's genuinely robbed. We had a team that. Yeah, we had a team that obviously was playing the grand final the next week, but the game hadn't started and they weren't in a winning position.
Yeah. So, we'd started, we bowled them out for 80, 90 odd and put off on us. But,
that's right. That's right. But it's weird how the world works, because I would say most people that will watch this would have been at some point laughing at the pandemic, thinking, we're either A, immune in Australia because it won't hit us, or B, this is not actually that serious. And it turns out it is extremely serious, because if you think about how many deaths we've had in Victoria alone, which is a tragedy, and that's with a lockdown. That's with 6 months of a lockdown. Imagine if we were out and about, the enormity of those deaths. But that's not what we're here to talk about.
No.
You talk about me.
Yeah, it's your turn this time, under the grill.
Yes, under the grill. I don't mind it. I actually think Nick Sutherland and Ryan Hassan. And this probably pinches away from one of the questions last, but I recorded a podcast with them last week. I think it's being released today,
Oh
potentially.
yeah,
So just give the Woke Blokes podcast a shout out to anyone that is watching this. Yeah, jump on there.
I'll have to check that one out after this. I just
I'll just
finished the episode with Taylor from last week, so
Yeah. What did you think of that?
it was really interesting to hear her speak on it. Really, yeah, I'd never really looked into it when the internet trolling happened with her.
Yeah.
I'd never really looked at it, but yeah, it was interesting to hear her speak about it. One thing that stuck out was the maturity around it.
Mate, she's so I did some boxing training with her 3 years ago. She put it out on social media, and I reached out and I said, yeah, I'd be keen as to do some boxing training. I used to do it with Andrew Maloney, he's just flown out off to Vegas today to to try and fight back for his belts. He lost in Vegas a couple of months ago, and I absolutely loved it. Then he to Kingscliff to be trained by someone else, and so yeah, Taylor helped me out a fair bit. So I listened to the Trolls podcast Nick and Ryan did on the Woke Blokes podcast, and I said to him, "Do you want me to try and get you on?" And Nick said, "Oh, DM'd her, but never got anything back." And I'm like, "I'll text her," and she was amazing.
Yeah,
She's so giving with her time when she doesn't have to be, and considering the amount of abuse she does cop, like that's enough for a lot of people to just to hide away and shy away from it.
she also came across very humble, which was something I liked when they were talking about the photo of her, obviously, which caused the trolling. Just the yeah, it was very humble, the photographer, and she was very humble about it. It was amazing to listen to.
Yeah, and I think we can probably digest the podcast a little bit now before we get into me, but I think it's such an important topic at the moment with trolling and social media and stuff like that. And I mean, I'm not sure if you've ever copped it with what you're doing, but it's amazing, you can get very caught up in the online bullying world. Like I know when I'm at my mentally health, when I'm at my worst, I find myself scrolling through people's posts and I see. I remember last year I was struggling bad with my mental health, and I used to go through every post about Taylor Harris because I knew her, I knew she was humble, and I wanted to like stick up for her. And I was reading all this stuff, and it was affecting me. And like that's part of the reason I don't go on social media very often because I read stuff and it affects me because I feel for the person that's A, trolling because they're clearly in pain, and B, I feel for the person who's receiving it because they don't deserve it.
Yeah. Well, it springs to mind for me. I had going back 10 years, I had five mates die in a car crash.
Yeah.
And they wrapped themselves around a tree. And social media the next day, there was a Facebook page that popped up, and it was "Rest in peace, the tree of the car crash."
Yeah.
I remember, seeing red and going on there and hurling abuse and how dare you, but I was feeding what they wanted. It's and you look back at it now and go, I was just fueling them that.
Yeah.
Wanted it was.
Yeah, and it's looking at it's projecting at the individual, not looking past it as to why this person would create something. So they're obviously bored with themselves, or there's something going on in there for them to actually do that. Like,
Well, Taylor, the way Taylor put it is, "Who hurt you?"
yeah,
That blew my mind. Like, just something so simple, but how often there is underlying issues.
yeah, and I think for people that don't know what we mean by that, give the podcast a listen because, yeah, Taylor responded to a troll and just said to them in a message, or might have been direct reply, just said, "Who hurt you?"
Direct message.
Yeah, and they wrote back basically apologising and saying no one's ever asked me that. It really hit them because, like, it's funny, when I was in the mental health clinic last year, one of the group therapy sessions was list some of the things that you relate back to depression and stuff like that, and we listed like 50 things, and the therapist was like, "No, you haven't hit the one I'm looking for. You haven't hit," and we're like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" He's like, "No group ever hits it, and it's the fact that you're hurt." So anger comes from the fact you're hurt. Like, it all, under everything is this hurt, this hurt little child or this hurt teenager or this hurt adult who projects all this other shit out. And I think when he said hurt, we all just went, like, we all cringed. We're like, like, don't say that word.
Yeah.
But it's so true. It's
one of those truths that hits home.
Yeah, and we all went far out, like, and it's not intentionally. No one intentionally hurt us. Like, a lot of the stuff that happens as we're kids isn't intentional. It's from a lack of education, awareness, understanding, someone doing their best. So and that's the big thing Nick and I say now is it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility.
Yeah.
Going forward. So.
Highlights another really good episode that I found was the hard to swallow pills.
Yeah.
Which was going through those truths. So yeah, again, if you haven't checked them out, it's probably worth having a listen to because there's bits of gold in every episode, really.
Yeah, there is. I think I got to a point where I think I'm going to go back and listen to them because I think it's one of those things. You listen to everything once, but then your perspective changes. So you listen to it again. It's like when you read a book or even the point where you study. Like, you don't just walk into you're a sparky. You don't just walk into your course and read over one book and go, "I know everything now." Like, you read again and again and again.
Well, example today is I found out a new trick about how to use a drill chuck. It's unbelievable. But like I was saying to Nick during the week in our session that I've been watching Man Up by Gus. Again, it's probably about the 5th time I'm watching it now.
Yeah.
I said, even now, I'm finding new things in it every time I watch it. Like, there's little bits that I've missed, or I've missed the meaning of it, or understanding of it now. Like, obviously now I'm seeing it from a different aspect, but yeah, it's incredible just to rewatch. And even a couple of times when I've re-listened to episodes, it just, your mind sees it completely differently now. It's
And so I remember, I think I mentioned this in one of the videos earlier. Like, I had someone 10 years ago message me saying, "I've got like a secret pill that will help your depression go away." And in that time, I was so angry. But with what I know now, I wouldn't accept it, but I would say thank you for trying to help. But that's not, instead of getting angry, because I see it all so much differently. That's why we can't look back on sort of past versions of ourselves and be so judgmental, because we did the best we could with what we knew.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So.
Anyway, well, talking about the podcast, which is kind of answering the first question, was how did you get in contact with Nick?
So I'll give Nick a shout out, but also give Ryan a shout out. So Ryan, in November last year, I was at a point where my mental health had deteriorated, and I'd tried everything over 12 months. So probably over 2 years, to be honest. I'd tried everything. I tried to get back into work. I tried to do like Wim Hof. I tried to do all the latest crazes. I tried everything, honestly. I left no stone unturned in trying to improve my health. And it reached a point where my fiance and I sat down and I said, "I need to get real help, professional help. Otherwise we won't last another week." And she basically said, I'm ready to walk. Not because we didn't love each other, because it was just toxic. And the only way to improve that was to work on myself. So I reached out to, so a friend told me about Ryan from the Centre for Healing, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll read up. And I read up and I was like, yeah, well, I love it. It just sounds like a down-to-earth guy who can, he's not going to take my shit, but he's also going to be able to help. And so I went in and I had a meeting with him, and instantly I was like, this is for me. Like, but the one thing I'd already done was I'd already spoken to family members and friends, and basically said I was going to go into a mental health clinic and get 24-hour care, because I probably needed a bit more support than I was getting. I'd probably burn a few bridges in that time, and it was probably the best thing for my fiance at the time as well, for me to actually get away, but to also know I was in a safe environment. So spoke to Ryan and said, I want to do what you offer. Paid up the money. Booked myself into the mental health clinic, and that 4 to 6 weeks was like so intense. A lot of home truth, and changed my life dramatically.
Yeah.
Then the new year came, and I was obviously out of hospital, and I had a couple of flare-ups. Got a bit angry at a few things, and I was still going pretty well. And then Ryan said, "Do you want to come on our podcast?" So I didn't even know they had a podcast. So sat down and jumped on a podcast with Ryan and Nick, and through that conversation, Nick and I, understood we probably had a lot in common, and organised to catch up for coffee. Just no strings attached. Just catch up and discuss our stories and life. And through that conversation, so I was creating a mental health directory. So it was more aimed at that. And I just said, like, what do you do here? What does MyndFit do? And he ran me through it. And I said, well, if I'm going to put you on the directory, I want to know what you're about. And I think I can improve myself still. I don't know. Yes, I was intense therapy for 6 weeks, but I've still got a lot of work to do. So let's book in a discovery session and see what it's about. And going back in, had a discovery session. I was like, you know what? Just sign me up for 12 weeks, because I know I still have work to do. I'm not going to sit here and deny it. These things don't change in 2 months' time. They take 12, 18, 24, 36 months of consistent work. And I signed up for a 12-week program pretty much the next day. And I think my fiance was pretty shocked, because it was just more money going out of the bank account. But as I will always say to everyone, it was an investment. Like that 3-month period, it didn't work. So that's costing you $1,000 a week roughly. And because I wasn't working, I couldn't get JobKeeper or JobSeeker. So it's actually cost me 6 months more of income. But I don't regret any of it. Like the amount I've learned, I know for the next 20 years will probably earn me all of that money back plus more. But also not just financially, just wealth and health throughout. So that's how Nick and I got, talking.
One of the keys ago there was that, that real tried everything. Like you didn't just, how often we hear people they'll see a counsellor and go, it's not for me. And they give up on it. And that's what, I've written down the key that I found there. It was like, you tried everything, you gave everything a go until you found what worked for you.
Yeah.
And another one is, the work doesn't stop. It doesn't come to a point that it's like you're cured of mental health. It's again a bit like your physical fitness. It doesn't come to a point where you go, you have done enough training. You are physically fit for life. It's an ongoing thing you got to work on.
That's what I got stuck. So I tried taking my own life at 21. Then, went through this 3 or 4 year battle, and for probably 2 or 3 years, I was fantastic. I stopped seeing a psychologist, and I was relying on my physical health. So I was doing, I was training, I was PT, so I was, fit, strong, confident, but what I didn't realize is that I was using my physical health to benefit my mental health. And yes, physical health plays a huge role in that, but I was putting everything in that. So I didn't have the balance. I was codependent on physical, and I was codependent on looking a certain way. And if I didn't look that certain way, I was taught that I was a failure by what I was looking at, what I was involving myself in, and it got to a point where I was actually in the best shape of my life. And from one weekend, I just went severely downhill because I was so burnt out, and I hadn't looked after my mental health. And I think that's one thing that really bothers me now with PTs and physical training, is that people use it as a mental health escape. They say it's good for their mental health, which it is, but you need to have other things. You can't. It's like even saying, I meditate every day and that's what I do to get out of shit. It's like you've got to have other things as well. Like, sorry.
Oh, it's definitely 100%. Like, this is what me and Nick are working on with me at the moment. Is I'm someone who 5 days a week's up at 5 a.m. and we'll head to the gym. I'll train for an hour and a half. But it's about breaking that up. And what we were saying is maybe one day go to the gym, the next day meditate, next day.
Yeah.
I'll say to him, I find going to the gym almost like a meditation, because you put your headphones in and you get to a point where all your focus is on the weights. And you almost, it does bring you back into that balance. But again, it's about splitting it up.
Yeah, and I guess the reason for splitting it up is you don't want to be relying on one thing, because what if that one thing is taken away from you, i.e. pandemic. Yeah. So the gym's been taken away from so many, and so many people are blaming the government for the gym's been taken away. It's like, you've got to understand that you've got to be able to have other ways to manage your mental health. And I know for me, so I went through 2 hip surgeries, and my outlet was running. So I was training for a 50-kilometre ultra trail event, which is in the Blue Mountains. It's equivalent to about an 80-kilometre road run, they reckon. And I was 2 weeks out from it, so I was as fit as I've ever been. And I remember I used to get up at like 5 o'clock on a Saturday morning and run up the fire trail in the Dandenongs 3 times. And my mate's like, "What the fuck are you doing?" I'm like, "This is my outlet. I love it. I just switch my headphones on and go for it."
Yeah.
But in a day, basically. So one week I ran 36 kilometres down the Warby Trail, walked back. The week after, I ran a kilometre and I was in agony. And then the trainer said, "Stop and just give yourself a rest. You've got the Ks in the legs. You'll be fine if you rest for the next 2 weeks." Next week, I was like, "I'll just go and do a 2-3K, just light jog, 100 metres around the track." And I basically fell to the ground. And I was like, "This isn't right." And I thought I had ITB issues, but it turned out that I had bone on bone in both my hips, and surgery was required. And all of a sudden, running was ripped away from me. And, the bone on bone, while it's being cleaned up, I'm not immune to that sort of coming back. And the fact is, I'll probably need hip replacements when I'm older. So getting back into that kind of running is just basically asking for hip replacements 10 years earlier than what I will potentially get it. So running was just ripped out. And that was when I realized, like, I needed other avenues to be able to help myself than just physical training. Like, you can't just rely on that one thing, because in a moment it can be ripped away. And yes, there'll be avenues around that. Like, you can do different kinds of physical training, but you won't get the same enjoyment out of that as what you would other things potentially. So people just need to be really careful that if they're relying on, it's having a codependent relationship with anything is unhealthy.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one thing, and like I'm lucky I found meditation through having the gym taken away. So I guess, there's lucky there. One thing I wanted to touch on was you mentioned you went to your friends and family for support. How important was it to you to reach out to them? Was it the first time you'd reached out, and B, how important was it to have their support going in?
Wasn't the first time. I'd reached out to a couple of friends when I was 17, 18, but back then I had no idea what was going on. I didn't know there was such thing as mental health or mental health issues or anything. I just thought you had to be happy all the time, and if you weren't, you were a failure. I quickly have now realised that it's okay to be sad sometimes. It's just not beating yourself up for being sad, and creating that really unnecessary loop of shit, basically. Then when I tried to take my own life, everyone knew. I was honest up front. I was then at 23, became a speaker for Beyond Blue, and started writing blogs about my mental health, which was fantastic because the support was thick and fast. I only ever had 2 people over a period of time say probably on the negative side of things, were pretty rude and and this is where everything has a benefit and a negative effect is I got stuck in my story. I got stuck in the depression. So that was what was really hard to then talk to my friends and family about going into a hospital, because I'd got to a point where I was so well, what I thought it was well, I felt like a failure again. I felt like I shouldn't be back down this slope because I've done all the work. But thankfully I found out I didn't do all the work. And you need to continually do it. But in saying that, like the support I had from family and friends, like considering it was leading into Christmas last year, I had a mate who he was down from Dubbo for the weekend. He popped in the hospital to see me. I had another 2 mates pop in to see me. There's probably a check-in every 2 or 3 days from my best mates. So that was really good. It's also funny. I was talking to someone the other day, but you find out who really is there for you in your darkest times. So I had a lot of people over the years tell me, if you ever need anything, reach out. And then I reached out to a couple of people, and I also had, people over the years say, whenever shit hits the fan with you, we'll be there. But they weren't. And so that taught me a lot. It taught me not to give more than what I can give, or just because I can give doesn't mean you have to. And also to appreciate those closest to you. Like my career club mates aren't my best mates. They're sort of career club mates, so to speak. But they were probably the most supportive out of everyone. And that just showed me that it doesn't matter if you don't speak to some people for 4 or 5 months. They're probably still the guys that will go out to battle for you when you go into war or whatnot. And that was some of my best friends I haven't, the people I grew up with around 18, 19, 20, I know that I could reach out to them, even though we probably speak once a year or once every 2 years. So,
Now, it was how first Ryan helped you, and then Nick.
How did they help?
Yeah, through their programs.
What Ryan did was something that's never happened before. It gave me a really big understanding that a lot of the things that were going on wasn't my conscious, it was my subconscious. So my fight or flight mode would kick in. He didn't allow me to excuse my poor behaviour, but I understood then where it was coming from and why it was coming up. So that gave me the power to heal and deal with it. To the point, I reached out to Ryan again mid through this 12-week program with Nick. Felt like I was cheating on Nick a little bit, but reached out and said, I actually think I might have been sexually abused as a kid. And he's like, all right, let's delve back into that. So he does root cause therapy, which is kind of like timeline therapy. You sort of go back to an event and relive it. And when I was reliving it, I realized that I actually hadn't been sexually abused. I had just been in a position where I was trapped. So I was being tickled by someone in my family. But in that moment, I didn't realize I couldn't say no because I was laughing, but I actually wet my pants. Now, I've never enjoyed being tickled, and I always go to that instant wetting my pants and tell someone to go away because in that moment as a 3-year-old, I couldn't say no. I had no. So I can't remember what Nick Ryan called it, but I think it's like abuse where you're just basically trapped. It doesn't need to be sexual abuse. So, and then I sort of was in that, reliving that memory, and I realised that I was crying after that memory. Once the person had left, I sat there crying because I just couldn't say no. So I was. So that's he really helped me heal a lot of those traumatic times in my life. Which you look back and you're like, why am I still bent up about that? But it's the inner child that's bent up. It's not you. It's the old version of you which is just stuck. And then Nick's helped. He's helped me slow down. Would probably be the best example. Just to observe life. So when something happens, just say that's interesting, and that just allows yourself a few seconds to understand the actual reality of the situation. You don't take things as personal. So I used to take everything personally, whereas now if someone says no to me, I'm like, okay, it feels horrible inside, but you go, all right, this isn't about me, this is about them, and you need to respect that. And so he's taught me a lot about slowing down, observing a stimulus and not reacting to it. But also just the element that we are still human and that at times we are going to act like dickheads, basically. And that's okay. So, he's taught me so much more. And I don't want to talk him up here or anything, but he's apparently not even watching these videos, so it doesn't matter. But he's helped me in more ways than that.
Yeah.
He's helped me he's just planted so many seeds in me that when it's sort of ready to sprout, it sprouts, and I'm like, wow, like it's probably the best way to describe it is I don't feel like at any stage this year in 2020, where there's a global pandemic and there is physical lockdowns, that I've been locked down once. Whereas in 2019, I felt like I was as locked down as I've ever been in my life. And he's helped me create that. So it's been a partnership. It hasn't been him just feeding me that. He's helped me. He's mirrored things back to me and reflected when I've done sort of healthy work and when I haven't done healthy work and how I can improve it. And I've not once felt trapped. This year I felt so empowered in what I can do. There's still so much I can do. We think about what's not in our control, but there's so much in our control.
Absolutely.
So that's probably a couple of the biggest things, especially while we're in a pandemic. I think it's really important to know. And Nick always goes back to the quotes. Nelson Mandela was locked in prison for 27 years and never once felt trapped, despite being he probably did at times, but walked out. And also Viktor Frankl, who was in the Holocaust, who Nick loves.
Just put one of his quotes here.
Yeah.
Exactly what you're talking about. I've got between stimulus and response, there is a space, and in that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom.
Yeah, and I mean,
speaking, that I think of.
Yeah, and it's so true. When I couldn't even imagine being in a Holocaust. So, like, to be able to, have that freedom. Like, if I was in a Holocaust last year, I would have just probably taken my own life. Whereas this year, I'd have been like, no, I have the choice to just, to be free. I'm still free. There's still a possibility of me getting out of this, all that kind of shit. So it's so incredibly important. And as Nick's brand is called Mind, my mind. So my mind, like my mind has changed dramatically. Like someone will have a go at me and swear at me or whatever, and I'll be like, okay, no worries. Whereas I used to like basically go home and cry and tell myself I'm the worst person in the world. But it also allows me, when I have my human moments, to just not beat myself up about that as well.
Yeah. Well, that was my next question was going to be, what lessons have you taken from Nick and Ryan?
Be kind to myself when you do have those human moments. And probably the one that probably stands out, I think we've spoken about this before, is just because I've had the ability to help myself doesn't mean I should go out and just sprinkle my magic wand around and help everyone in the world. Like, just wait for people to come to you. Be attractive in that way. So if people want help, they'll come to you. You can't force something on someone. You can't keep reaching out to someone, because that'll burn me out. They're probably the most valuable lessons, because that will prevent me from burning out. So there's a saying that a lot of business people use it. If you don't charge for your time, you'll end up in the gutter with the people you're giving a free service to. So what good is it that to them then? So it's important that I don't, keep messaging someone day in, week out, because if they're not giving anything, they're not meeting me. Sort of, doesn't even need to be halfway. It can be 60-40 or 30-70. But if they're not meeting me somewhere, I'm just going to burn out. What's the point?
Yeah, absolutely.
And also to understand that, if someone was to ever have a go at me, it's them, it's not on me. Because I've seen both of them have had people post negative things about their businesses or say stuff, and so I'm like, how do you deal with that? And they're just like, if you take in every negative comment, you have to take in every high positive comment. Like you've got to find the balance. And so I do that now.
And last one I got here was, what's your involvement with MyndFit now?
We actually had a business meeting yesterday, so I know my exact role at the moment. So in those conversations with Nick early on, we established that we had some very similar goals, and that was to create a mental health gym. He's 13 years ahead of me, as he points out, and I recognise. So I would have been silly not to sort of reach out and say, well, I actually want your help. Can I sort of work? Can we? So I call it a traineeship role, where I'm basically volunteering my time with him, for him, but to create something that'll be big enough for both of us to be employed in. So basically doing a lot of the admin work. So people probably call Nick's phone, so work phone sometimes, and I might answer. I might call people, and they'll go, "Hi, Nick," and I'll be like, "Actually, no, it's Shane."
I reckon every phone call for us these days.
Yeah. He's had the phone all week, actually. It might have freaked people if you feel that.
He actually got me today. Calling me, and I said, "Oh, hey, Shane." He's going, "No, it's Nick."
And then, doing the admin, so the email side of things, signing people up to meditation online. I start my course on late this month. So I'm going to start basically doing the courses that Nick did. Not all of them, and not. I'll obviously have some along the way that I want to do, but I just basically want to get up to a level where I can start taking clients one-on-one in the business. My aim is 12 months time to be able to start taking clients one-on-one in some capacity there. It'll probably, prior to that, I'll probably look at doing some free sessions with people. So obviously part of my training, I'll need to train people and Nick can watch those sessions back to give me free guidance and advice. I think I'm so lucky to be in a position where I've got someone with the experience who's fucked up along the way in business. And I have as well with my personal training business. So I get all that, but it's going to fast track me dramatically. You know, having someone there basically day by day to answer your questions. If I have a client who I'm doing free hypnotherapy on or free whatever, then I can go, fuck, this is how I felt about a session. You can go, that session actually ran really well, or okay, this is what you can do better. So that's what I'll be doing. And then once we can go to face-to-face meditation, I'll be running some TEDx classes. Oh no.
Yeah.
So some juggling. So I'm getting really good at juggling and talking and just doing other things now. But yeah, so we're running some MedX classes at MyndFit HQ. Looking after probably the ambassador role, the ambassador. So yeah, and then hopefully in 12 months' time I can go one-on-one with clients, and then slowly we can look at getting someone else in to do the admin side of things, and then Nick can sort of be more the face rather than taking clients one-on-one all the time. But at the same time, just going with the flow, like that's probably another lesson I've taken, is going with the flow rather than trying to force everything. The more we force, the less we get. When you flow, like it's amazing what things come into your life. And I know you need to push for things, you need to work for things, but just, I guess Nick kind of says, meet the universe halfway. So we're sort of just going with the flow a fair bit, and it's organically sort of coming together. You know, the online meditation membership starting to, grow some legs. We're starting to get some interest from outside sources. And yeah, it's creating something that hopefully is going to be a really good hangout spot for people that are like-minded. So we've set up a lounge area. There's going to be a sort of a cafe at the back, which Nick's partner will be running, and it'll just be a real chill-out zone. If people want to come and read a book for half an hour and just chill out, they can come in. One of us will probably be there, and we can hang out, chat, have a coffee, have a tea. We all just want to create a space for like-minded individuals, really. So that's my role, and I love it. Like, it's, as I said, I tried everything last year, and one of those things was a bricklayer for 8 weeks. So I went back to PTing again for a few weeks, and like after 4 to 6 weeks, I just gave up. I was like, I don't want to do this. So, and this is, I think I'm like 3.5 months, 4 months into this role, and I wake up and I get excited. Like, I've got some real physical illnesses at the moment with adrenal fatigue and chronic sinusitis, and so some mornings I'll wake up with a splitting headache, nausea, blurry vision, and it's really hard to get out of bed. But knowing where I'm going to a place where we're building something really special, drives me to get out of bed. And it takes a couple of hours for me. And Nick, sometimes I walk into work and he'll tell that my head's just throbbing. I'm working on all that stuff as well as my mental health, like to improve that. So I'm in a position where I can give people my best. But I'm just so excited to be. I'm really looking forward to when lockdown ends, not to run a MedX class, but for a random day, 10:30 in the morning or 2:30 p.m. when someone just walks through that back door and just sits down and just has a coffee and starts reading a book. Like that's what I love. And that doesn't get me any money or Nick any money, but that fills us up, that people feel comfortable in that space. And that's what we want. And as I said before, we'll need money to survive. So there's other things in place there, but that's what will fill me up. That, one of his one-on-one clients one day goes, what, I just want to chill out, but I want to go home for a couple of hours, and just comes in and we can chat, we can have coffee, tea, we can go for a walk. They might go, look, I just thought, you want to come down and walk along the beach or whatever. Like, that's the kind of thing that it really drives me, because I know that that's something that I would have loved through my hardest battle, is just a place to go and feel comfortable. You weren't going to be judged, and you felt safe, and you could work on those things that improve your mental health.
I know for me, when I first walked into the office, I almost got it was almost like a calming effect when you walked through those doors. Yeah, it's hard to describe really, but it was like a real calming effect.
It's really coming together, and the room's not even finished yet. And that's what's so great. There's been multiple people in the last week say it just feels so homely when they walk in, and that's great to hear, because that's what we wanted. We didn't want it to be this stressful place where everything's therapy. That's part of it, but that's not the whole thing. And we hope that after meditation classes that 5 or 6 mums can go out the back, and I know Emma's working on some herbal type teas and stuff like that. They might out the back and chinwag for an hour and talk about their experience and stuff like that, because I think that's just so important. Like, a lot of people are doing meditation or are getting help, but then they don't have anyone to sort of talk through it all afterwards, because the other people at home might not understand, and that's okay. But having those other 4 or 5 people that go, this is what I learned this week, and it's a positive place. It's not a let's talk about how bad our lives are. It's no, we're doing all these things that are helping us, and this helped me, but this isn't for me. So
setting up one of the things I really get is like a positive sense of community.
Yeah,
it's all everyone supporting each other, and
and that's what we want. Like, my fiance might do some PT down there as well. So we'll sort of have, and obviously there's the Myers and Pilates at Enhanced. So we've got it all on the street now. Like, we're really trying to create that it's a mental health gym, really a hub type where everyone's welcome. When I say everyone's welcome, if you're going to be bullying or judging or condemning or criticising, no, you're not welcome, unless you want to work on that. But we really, it's a community type thing. So
can't wait for the day someone else can stare up at the glass with me.
It's not even glass.
Glass.
See-through. I might saffron.
It's a mirror.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's kind of gone through the questions I had there. Just wanted to understand your how you came into contact with Nick and the lessons, and then your involvement. Because obviously a lot of people calling in these days are hearing from you. I really wanted to speak to you so people to get to know who you are. Is there anything that people may not know about you that you feel could help? Or
I think the most important thing is I'm just a human like everyone else. Like, I play sport, I play cricket, play golf. I love having a beer with mates. I like to joke around. I like to have a laugh. I'm just human like everyone else, but there's been mental health issues along the way, and the only way I got help was by reaching out to others and then actually actioning those things myself. So I'm normal. I'm weird, but I'm normal. It's like people that like it. I love to sing and I love to dance. I'm no good at either, but that fills me up. I have severe anxiety when Nick tells me to call one of his clients. Severe anxiety, it gave me a list of 35 people, and it took me 3.5 weeks to get through. So I still have battles every day. Oh, not every day, but a lot of the time anxiety will pop up. So yeah, he's still human.
Yeah.
As we talk about, like hopefully I can continue to get to a point where I don't sort of have those internal battles as much as they happen now, but that's all part of, I went from a 12-week to a 12-month program with Nick because I really want to. He talks about getting to 80% responsive, observing, responsive rather than 80% reactive, and I'd like to think I can get to 90-10, being the other person on the other side of the chair helping people. I think that's so important that it's not something for others to strive for, but it's something that I've got to sort of be that one showing the way. So I guess that's me, and but it's also not me. I'm so much more than that as well. But people will get to know that along the way. I care a lot, sometimes too much, sometimes not enough, just like everyone. So my anxieties are never around myself; they're around upsetting other people. So yeah, one of those things. We're all a work in progress.
Yeah, we're all human. We're trying to think of it. It's as Nicola said, we're all mediocre, we're all incompetent, and we're all
ignorant.
Think of the third one, ignorant, and that's okay.
Yeah, and to a degree, and that's okay. Yeah, we are, every one of us, and that's that there's some of those, some of the stuff he's worked into his programs. It's so basic, and common sense, but we don't learn it. And when you look at it, you just laugh because you're like, oh my god, that's what I'm acting like. I'm acting like I'm perfect at everything. I'm acting like I should know everything, but I don't. So,
this I've got from him. I had a sleepless night last night.
Yeah.
And on most people, if I can't sleep, I'll normally start YouTubing just strange things like history things. But then I found myself last night. Obviously, he talks about Viktor Frankl a lot, and I've seen a lot recently of people comparing lockdown to Nazi Germany. Like, unbelievable difference, but yeah, I've been seeing it a lot, and I've been like the fear of Dan Andrews, and I was kind of like looking at it, and then I'd never really looked into Viktor Frankl. I was aware of the book, and I just YouTubed a few things about it, and it blew my mind. Like,
I haven't done it yet.
Yeah, how graphic, because it was showing a lot of footage and photos from concentration camps, and I was like, if the people who were saying these things actually looked at like some of those photos, I was like, how can you even?
Yeah, we're incredibly blessed and lucky to be living in Melbourne. Like, in all honesty, like it could be so much worse. It could be so much better. Like, but in reality, this is how it is. And in reality, if we want to make changes, we have to put ourselves in those positions to make changes. Like, I'm not going to criticise the next coach of Yarra Glen because they're doing a worse job or whatever job than I am, because I'm not in that job. That's not my choice. Like, be anyone that's bagging Dan Andrews wouldn't put themselves in that position. They just wouldn't.
Yeah.
And so everyone's allowed their opinion. Like, I'll never go someone, but once you turn around and you start calling in names and stuff like that, Mike, who calls people names? Like kids.
Yeah.
And just like,
well, that's it. It goes down to the lessons that we learn. Our taking the easy path, and it's I can't go see my friends. I can't, stuff we learn about. And it's easy to blame others for what we can't do, or because we're not getting our own way. And it's really that time.
I must be perfect. Must get what I want and when I want it, and I must be loved and liked. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very irrational belief
so much
that everyone's going through right now. Like, Anytime I don't look at a post and judge or get angry because that's just doing what they're doing. I look at it and go, all right, which immature, irrational, toxic belief are you running off? Which isn't their fault. Like, it completely isn't their fault. Like, but it is their responsibility.
That's what really got me interested. Like, if I hadn't come across it, I probably wouldn't have been YouTubing Viktor Frankl last night. It was taking taking what they said. It was kind of like, that's interesting what they're saying, and it was kind of looking at why are you possibly saying that.
Yeah, I think it's funny when people use they use comparisons, but they've never actually looked into the detail of what they're comparing to.
Yeah.
But comparing is also another horrible thing to do. Like, that's a cognitive distortion in itself. That's not looking at reality. Like, I agree that looking back on time and seeing that, we're not worse off, we are blessed, and let's be grateful for that. But let's also not compare, because that was a completely different era and time. But let's just respect it, I guess, and be grateful for the opportunities we get. And that's with everything. Like, let's be grateful we have television. Where 100 years ago, the pandemic, they didn't have television. They didn't have phones. They didn't have
Zoom.
Yeah. So we need to be grateful in these times.
Even the freedom, a lot of people say we've had our freedom taken away from us, but it's looking at the positives of the freedom we mentioned a few weeks ago. We're seeing more people exercising that at the moment. Like, if anything, there's more sense of a freedom. We're putting the phone down more and spending time with the kids, or we're not working. So we're getting to know our family. We're actually getting to know.
And that's freedom's in the eye of the beholder. Like, what your freedom is different to mine. Like, I know my grandma has never left Australia because they could never afford to leave Australia. Where you try and find someone that's reached 30 now who hasn't travelled overseas at least twice or three times. Like, we've had a luxurious life. We live luxury for so many years. Their freedom was different. So I try and look at it as, parts of our freedom have changed, but we still have this element of freedom that we have at our disposal. Like, we've been so blessed. Like, I've been so blessed to be able to travel to 5 countries prior to now, because in reality, we're not going to have the freedom to fly to another country, maybe New Zealand, potentially for 2 years, maybe longer. Some countries, maybe 10 years before they open up their borders, or we open up the fact that we'll allow people to go there and come back. So I look at it like that. Yes, freedom's altered, but it's in the eye of the beholder. So that's when you can go back to Viktor Frankl and Nelson Mandela and people like this, who their freedom was taken from them, but they chose not to allow it to take over their mind.
Yeah.
So freedom, I do like my own quote here, but freedom is in the eye of the beholder. People live happy, very content lives in their own house for 100 years. My grandma's lived on her own for 27 years.
Yeah.
And it hasn't left the house this whole pandemic, but he's still, he's having her moments, but freedom is in the eye of the beholder. You've still got options.
Absolutely.
And I do feed off some people that I know that are disabled, and I go, their freedom was stripped away from them for whatever reason, but they've made a choice that they're going to do what they can within their powers.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all I got.
Yeah, I'm the same. I've those questions to know you, and
I'm about to go out for a half-an-hour walk with the dogs.
Yeah, I'm about to just got home from work, and so I'm about to do my walk. Listen to the latest episode of the Woke Blokes.
Well, I don't think it's up yet.
Oh, isn't it?
Nah.
It's normally.
No,
Oh, right.
Nick's been.
What I want.
I just released one.
Did ya? What's yours? Well, while we're here, I'll give yourself a plug.
So I got a podcast, Power, Strength, and Vulnerability. I released my 38th episode today. Just talking to people with mental health issues right throughout time. So today's one was on a lady who had anxiety and postnatal depression. Last one was on my brother who stayed back at work in 2018, got a nail to the eye. So, and a nail was hit out of a steel post and hit him there, like just above the skin, but the top of the eyeball. And didn't go back to work for 2 years. Had a bit of PTSD, severe anxiety, depression. So we chatted about that because, as we were just talking about, his freedom got stripped right away. And that caused issues, that caused mental health challenges. He'd never had mental health challenges before. So it was really interesting because I'd had mental health challenges my whole life. And I remember 3 months into his battle, he was in mum's kitchen. He doesn't remember this. And he turned to me and he said, and I laughed. He said, "I now know what you felt so often throughout your life."
Yeah.
And I was so relaxed because I went, "I know I can help you." It was amazing. So he battled for a couple of years and still sees his psychologist, and he's very quiet about he's the opposite to me. He's very quiet about his battles, and doing that podcast is extremely difficult for him, whereas this kind of shit's easy for me. So it's amazing how we're brothers and we've grown up with the same life, but we're so different. He never had mental health challenges until something happened, and but I was able to give him some skills and tips on the way. So if anyone wants to listen,
chuck that on for the walk. Now I've pulled a quote. I've used one of them a bit earlier, but I've pulled another quote like you did last week.
Yeah.
And it's another Viktor Frankl. It's kind of tying in what we were just finishing up here before.
Yeah.
Everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. And that was by Viktor Frankl.
That was the one I thought you were going to go with before.
It's for last.
It's so true. They're both so true. They're both really hard hitting in a very simplistic way. So let's thank everyone that's tuned in. If you do have any messages, emails, send them through to admin@myndfit.com.au, and I look forward to bringing you some new ambassadors over the next couple of weeks, and I'm sure Nick will float in and out, but let's hope Nick has some more work in the next week. Thanks, guys, and thank you, Nick.
Guys.